Hey everybody, with thanks to Destination Triumph, I've had this Triumph Street Twin on loan for about 5 days. This is a simple bike really, so I want to keep this review quite simple. I've done a few different videos on it, so check them out if you're really interested in maybe buying one of these, because I do cover different aspects. But this is the review, this is my final thoughts. So first, let's have a little look at it close up. Now I'm going to get out on the road in a second, but there's a few things to cover first. Should we do the controls? So, to the garage and I'll show you the controls of this bike. Okay, so the controls on the Street Twin. This clutch, incredibly light as you can see. Normal pass light over here. You have an information button which changes your trip and information on the display. We'll look at that in a minute. Then you have the indicators, the horn, and this is the mode button to switch between the traction control modes, of which there are two. You look at the very bottom there, it says road. If I press the traction control button, the mode button, it'll go to rain, and that's all it has, road and rain. Opposite side, obviously you have the front brake, throttle, kill switch, and starter switch, and the hazards, and that's basically it. So on the display, you've obviously got the miles an hour around here, and you've got this little digital display with all the other information other than the obvious lights like, you know, indicators and high beam and that sort of stuff, and your neutral light. Now to scroll through these, I've just got to press the I button. So there's our RPMs. Then we've got the place where we turn off traction control if you want to, with pressing and holding. It turns it off. Press and hold, turns it on. Then obviously you've got like odometer, trip, range, your MPG and all sorts of stuff like that. So there is good information there, and a clock. So there's good information there, but it's very simple. It's just that little thing there. And that is easy enough to read while you're riding. I've just pulled the door closed so you can kind of see what it looks like at night. Very nicely illuminated in just white. And there you go. That is it for the controls on the very basic Street Twin. And this is a 900cc bike, but it has only got about 65, I think it is, brake horsepower, 80 newton meters of torque, so it's got plenty of grunt. Okay, let's get down to, you know, sort of 20 mile an hour. Just open it up. Nearly up to 60. It's got plenty of grunt. So yeah, 900cc, 65-ish brake horsepower and 80 newton meters of torque isn't absolutely massive numbers, but it is enough for this bike, I've found. The one thing that stands out the most about this bike for me is the rider experience. This engine is absolutely lovely. It's so soft, and yet it's got grunt down there. It sounds very nice. You only really need to use first, second and third. It is very long geared, and I kind of like it like that because it's got the grunt. You know, you feel virtually no vibrations from this engine when you're sort of around this sort of mark, you know, comfortably moving along. Yeah, okay, if you drop down, you get a bit of a rumble, but it's very subtle. Engine braking is quite good. It's not the most powerful in the world, but it's definitely there. Clutch is very light because it is an assisted clutch. And it was interesting that this bike doesn't have a quick shifter, an auto blipper in it. I'm sure that might be because it's lower down the range and they're trying to keep the price around what it's at. It's about 8 grand. In the grand scheme of things, that's not the cheapest, not the most expensive, but the build quality and what you get in return seems pretty fair for 8 grand. But I do feel like it would have been nice if this had a quick shifter and an auto blipper as at least an option. It's not something that Triumph Options gives you in the option, sorry, but you can get one from a third party, so that's fine. But I don't know, it's just they stick them on everything else. Why not offer it for this? But then maybe it's because you can sit in first, second and third and you don't use it a lot when you're moving around like this. You know, when you're just on the road, you just one gear, use the throttle, and that's practically it. In town and city though, you are up and down the box a bit. If you really want to try one of these bikes, if you're really considering buying one, go and test ride one. I think the feel is something I cannot fully explain to you. That's the problem. That's one of the things about this bike that I really like, is the feel, and I can't really tell you about that. The mirrors are both good and bad. I really like the way that they've put the mirror mounts on the front side cover on the bars rather than on the cast side, so you can just change the little caps, as it were, and you won't have any mirrors or any mirror holes to blank off. I think they've done that, keeping in mind that people will like to customise these, and the mirrors do go quite often in those customisations. I mean, they do work, but they just are so small and so narrow that you only really seem to get a very small bit behind you. You always needing to shoulder check anyway, so it's one of those examples where it's like losing the mirrors wouldn't be that big of a deal, I don't think. Handling is very nice, and as I say, it's got the overtaking power too. So it's a nice combination of very smooth and refined. You know, I'll go up a gear here, 4th gear, 3,000 RPM, 60 mile an hour. It's just so smooth and pleasant. So it's kind of a very pleasant, refined, comfortable ride on a flat road. I'll get onto the suspension. But if you ride it differently, it can be quite grunty and aggressive and leery and quite hooliganish, in fact. And that's backed up with the sound, because you want to hear this thing. Oh! I'll get onto the suspension. You want to hear this thing properly make some noise, because it sounds fantastic. It's not the loudest bike in the world, but it's all very low, very rumbly and grumbly. And it sounds great. I really enjoy it. So let's get on to that suspension, shall we? The front is non-adjustable, the rear is adjustable. Oh, actually, I may have made a mistake on the rear shocks. They are adjustable in the sense they've got the normal ratcheting system, but it appears to be on its lowest setting as is. Twin shock, and I find it to be rather firm. Now, if you're on a nice smooth road and it's got undulations in it, rather than, you know, bumps, it's nice. It's a very good smooth ride, and it works. However, if there's bumps in the road, this is quite jarring, and because of my height being 6'4", I find myself crunching a little bit for the height because of the distance with the bars. That I think could be improved with some taller, slightly more towards me side bars, just a little bit, so I could sit out here more comfortably. But I find myself scrunching a little bit just for comfort. Part of that also is to try and protect my back, because if you sit bolt upright, obviously the jarring goes straight through your spine, and I don't have the best spine in the world. So I have developed a little bit of discomfort in my back riding this bike, but as I say, I think that comes down to the firmness of the suspension and the little bit too small for me. It needs to be just that little bit bigger. I mean, I can sit closer to the tank to try and improve that, but then the problem is, because I'm tall, my knees touch the headers, and they're hot. That's another little gripe. It's not a gripe, it's just, it is what it is. It's a Triumph. This is what they're like. It gets hot. All Triumphs seem to get pretty hot, and this one is no exception. And my knees, as I say, when they touch the side of that, even through Kevlar jeans, I know it very quickly. I haven't burnt myself, but I'm very aware of the heat, so I tend to sort of, you know, hover my knees around a little bit when I'm going through corners. Let's try 0 to 60. Hit the rev limiter. So not the best time by any means, but you can tell, you know, you've got to hold on to this thing. It really does get off the mark. The steering on this was a little heavier than I was expecting. I mean, I was thinking maybe it was going to be rated a bit more and it'd be quite light on the front, but it's got quite a strong will to hold the dead ahead position, which means it's been raked out a little bit, to my understanding. More of a sports bike feeling, but maybe not quite that far out with it. Which is nice, because it means that you're just having to lean on the bars, counter steer your way around like this. You know, I'm counter steering through this, and it just turns nicely. Very predictable, very sort of clean tracking. Just use the throttle as you need it. Very pleasant. Now again, something that it can be quite subjective is the seat. I did find that the seat was a little bit firm, and after 2 or 3 hours in the saddle it started to get a bit sore on the butt. It's like a dense foam. It's also very nice, I will say, because it's suede, or a suede type material. Very grippy, very comfortable to sit on, in the sense of, you know, softness. But yeah, after a couple of hours it starts to get a bit not painful or anything like that, just a little bit, you know, bit of a numb butt. You see what I mean? It's like bubbly and soft sounding. All these little gripes are just little things, and honestly, I've absolutely loved having this thing. And it's a sort of bike that I could see myself having to replace my XJ6. You know, it's capable of doing the motorway miles, alright, no wind protection at all, really. It is comfortable 2-up, I've done a 2-up on it. But the thing for me is this one is a little bit small, and I realised that, yeah, I don't think that's going to be a good long-term solution for me, because if I do need to do a few hours, I'm going to start to get more problems with my back. So unfortunately this one is a tad too small for me, but I am going to try some of the bigger ones that are similar from Triumph, and that'll be nice to know. I have absolutely no idea where I'm going, and I don't care. This is exactly why I wanted to borrow this bike now. You know, I've gone through, I do have a bit of a methodology to the ones that I borrow. Part of it is what's available at the time, but this one, it was like, I know it's a sunny week, I know it's autumn, I know I love these sorts of bikes for calm rides. I just want to get into the country roads and just unwind, de-stress. Admittedly, then I have to edit everything and it becomes a bit more stressful, but at the time now I can honestly just enjoy it. It's not got the biggest tank in the world on it. It is a 900cc. You will get a lot more miles out of it, I think, if you just ride it more calmly, but kind of what's the point in that? I think I know where I am. Crikey Moses. Whoa! I have got the traction control on, right? Okay, so ABS on the rear brake does work. It's just that usual system of like info. Well, it says TTC on, and if I press and hold that, the light comes on to show that it's off. So thank you, bike, for doing a little bit of work for me. Let's see what you do this on. Yeah, you see, that's the traction control going, oh no, 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 no. I always try and work out where the bike in the market is aimed. What's it to do? Well, this is a full A licensed bike, but there is a variant available which is an A2. I can see people commuting on this. I can definitely see people using it in the country. I can see people using it as a general get-around bike and you know, a weekend fun bike. It's leery enough that you can have some proper fun on it. It's old school motorcycling, I think. It's old school with a modern twist. You know, it kind of feels like the old days, but the traction control and the ABS is there still just to help you a little bit. Or a lot of it. I don't think I've mentioned the brakes other than that little test on the gravel. Yes, the rear brake it's not very powerful, but it is an ABS rear brake, and they all kind of give up very early into you really pressing on them. The front brake is fantastic, very, very positive, very reliable, very trustworthy feeling. Something else to mention about this bike is its weight. It is a couple of 100 kilos. Now when you're up and you're going, it's great. It really does plant it to the road. It's nice and low down, so it switches directions, no problem at all. When you're manual handling it, yeah, you can feel it's got some heft to it, and I think it's because where it is very low down, when it tilts, once it gets a little bit tilted, that's when the weight really sort of builds up, and you notice it quite a bit. So my conclusion on this bike, absolutely lovely. Excels in rider feel and old school vibes, just nice calm riding. I think some people for a 900cc might want a bit more grunt, a bit more speed. This isn't really what this bike's about, so that's fair enough. And there are other bikes obviously in the ranges with a bit more power in place for you to choose that will do that for you. Trying to explain a feel when so much about riding this bike is feel is very difficult. If you think I'm doing a good job, hit that like button. Maybe consider subscribing. I'm doing lots and lots more bikes. I'm going to get as many done this year as I possibly can. Next year, all sorts I've got planned. So get on board. And if you want to feel like supporting this channel, please consider joining my Patreon. Links in the description. I am full-time. This is my full-time job. This is what I do. This is how I pay my bills. And it's only possible to support the audience that I can do that. So thank you very much to those that do. Their names go up at the end of the video. And they got to see this video probably a week ago. Oh, actually, I may have made a mistake on the rear shocks. They are adjustable in the sense they've got the normal ratcheting system, but it appears to be on its lowest setting as is. I reckon, if you change those for a nice set of more uprated shocks, if something can be done with the forks, I don't know if you can, if they're a cartridge system and you can change something or change the springs to, I don't know if it needs softening or what. It's kind of, they're a little bit basic, but they're actually okay. For most uses. But then you're asking this sort of bike to go around fast around the corner. It's like when I asked that bike to act like a sports bike. It's not that, it's a sports tourer, and you know, it's not the best at it. But anyway, huge thanks to Destination Triumph. Amazing support for the channel. Help me out. Where am I? This one. I need to take my camera off it. So yes, until the next one. Bye bye.